voice you hear is Richard Nixon in the Oval Office in 1971, giving advice to a strapping young bureaucrat and former college wrestler named Don Rumsfeld. Dispensing career tips was Nixon's favorite thing, and in this case, he was brainstorming what part of the world young Rumsfeld could use to build his resume as a diplomat.
I don't think there's much in the Mideast. And anyway, there's nothing you can do about the Mideast.
In case you couldn't hear those last words, Nixon insisted to Rumsfeld, "There's nothing you can do about the Middle East."
And yet, 13 years later, Rumsfeld strode through the Republican palace in Baghdad to grip the hand of one Saddam Hussein. He was there both on his own and as a representative of the American government, his goal to offer U.S. support to Saddam for Saddam's war against Iran.
There's a lot of conversation around that he's a madman and crazy and so forth. I don't happen to believe he is at all. He's a strong man, he's an intelligent man. He has a totally different value set than those of us in the United States.
Iraqi cameras captured the meeting on video, and 20 years later, during the build-up to the Iraq War, the footage was played to Rumsfeld on CNN.
December 20th, 1983, you were meeting with Saddam Hussein. I think we have some video of that. Tell me what was going on during this
Where
meeting.
did you get this video?
A couple of days after he rewatched that video, Rumsfeld stood in the White House press room, cameras rolling again, as he laid out the case to invade Iraq and to topple his one-time partner and our one-time client, Saddam Hussein.
Every day, every week, every month that goes by, his weapons of mass destruction programs are more fully developed, more mature. Every day that goes by gives him other opportunities to connect with terrorist networks.
How exactly did Rumsfeld get from his coffee with Nixon in 1971 to his consultation with Saddam in 1983 to his showdown with Saddam in 2003? That story is part of a much bigger one, namely, how and why did Saddam ever get to be a friend and ally of America, only for us to then nominate him as global supervillain? Did Saddam turn on us, or did we turn on Saddam? And what does all this reveal about why we really went to war in 2003? Because something tells you Rumsfeld knew the answer to that. When confronted with the footage of him meeting Saddam in the 80s, he didn't appear angry or irritated or ashamed. He simply said,
Isn't that interesting? There I am.
Speak about the sunshine. Speak about the sunshine. Speak about the sunshine.
Welcome to Blowback, a podcast about the Iraq War. I'm Brendan James.
And I'm Noah Colwin.
And this is our first episode, episode 1, Rosebud. The show is going to come out weekly, dropping every Monday, but for those of you who don't want to wait, all 10 episodes of the main show are available right now in Stitcher Premium. You can get there by going to StitcherPremium.com and signing up with the code BLOWBACK, one word, which gets you a free month of Stitcher Premium. You're going to get ad-free listening, access to all the Stitcher shows that they've got, and access, of course, to all 10 episodes of Blowback. Plus, we've got bonus episodes coming in the pipeline, several of which are only ever going to be accessible through Stitcher Premium, so you'll get those as well. So if you want to listen to all of Blowback right now, or at any point over the next couple months, that's StitcherPremium.com, promo code Blowback. One more thing is that you might have noticed there's also an episode 0 that's in your feed. Give that a listen if you haven't already, because it's a prelude to the rest of the show. We talk about why we're doing this and what we want to get out of it, what we want you to get out of it. And we introduce a lot of the characters that we'll be going on this perverse journey with. We get to know a little bit about Rumsfeld and Cheney and Condi Rice and Colin Powell and Paul Wolfowitz and all these goblins and ghouls that will become very important for the story coming up. But once you have listened to that, this is the real first episode where we start our story. And it's called Rosebud because before we even get to 9/11 and the Bush administration and the actual war in Iraq, we want to find and trace the origin, of America's perverse relationship with Iraq.
Right, and to appreciate the full horror and irony of what happened when we invaded Iraq in 2003, you have to go back a long, long ways to see where this story begins. And it's a story of British colonialism and Cold War politics and then the rise of Saddam.
Yeah, we're going to see this revolution happen in Iraq at the end of the 50s. And in that revolution, we're going to meet two very important characters, one being Saddam Hussein himself, the other being Ahmed Chalabi, the self-appointed arch nemesis of Saddam, who flees in the 1950s his own country and promises someday to come back with an American army and install himself as ruler. All right, let's do it.
At the center of our world lies the Middle East, and at its very heart, the ancient land which is Iraq. Two great rivers span its length, the Tigris and Euphrates. Out of this ancient heritage, the citizens of one of the world's youngest nations are building a new life and a modern
It's doing the work for us.
No.
We can just leave that on. Okay.
Yeah.
In 1920, Winston Churchill shot off a letter complaining about an uprising in Iraq, which was currently under British dominion. And this is what he wrote. I am strongly in favor of using poison gas against uncivilized tribes. Gases can be used which cause great inconvenience and would spread a lively terror. Whew. And the mustard gas on this occasion was not available, unfortunately, but the British did what they normally did and bombed the shit out of Iraqis, men, women, and children, until it was quiet again.
Ageless Iraq is no longer a remote, isolated country. Today, she is a main junction linking the East and West.
So in 1921, after this uprising, the British let the Iraqis have an election to install themselves a king. And it ended up being a guy named Faisal I.
And what was the election that got Faisal looked like?
Well, he ran as a single candidate, and he got 96% of the vote.
Sick.
That's the thing with the British Empire, is that it's sort of like British TV versus American TV, where they did everything first. You know, The Office, Chemical Attacks, Divide and Rule, but they did it very deadpan.
Right.
You know, it's just kind of ironic, and the American approach is a lot more earnest, and Jim and Pam get married, and Iraq gets to be a real democracy. You know, and the British are just like, fuck it. You have a king now. You voted him in 96%. This is the original series. This is the UK
BBC.
Iraq. Yeah, BBC Iraqi occupation. Now, a word about oil.
Wealth in Iraq was absent until man found oil deep below the unproductive sand.
The British took over Iraq from the Ottomans right around the time that oil was becoming the uber commodity that we think of it as today. And Winston Churchill, when he wasn't writing letters saying that we should gas Iraqis, helped negotiate a sweetheart deal for the company that would eventually become BP. And it transitioned the British Navy from the still dominant coal to oil. And it was a secret deal. This was right before World War I, in a period called the Great Unrest, which was a nearly half-decade of intense labor action and strikes. Churchill was one of the guys in charge of putting down those strikes. So converting to oil was one of those technological innovations that, you know, we think of like automation today, that gave workers less leverage and less control over the production process.
And oil was also a key part of imperial politics at the time, right? Like,
well, this is sort of when that happened. So in the early 20th century, you have these oil companies form a cartel, basically, and carve up Iraq. And they're going to end up running it just as much as any government for a long time. And they create a consortium called the Iraq Petroleum Company, which, contrary to its name, gives precisely 0 shares to the nation of Iraq itself.
Sheep stuffed with rice and a host of other good things. But that's only the first of the good things that will come to Iraq, thanks to oil.
So after World War II, and in fact before that war was even wrapped up, America had already set its sights on the new enemy, the Soviet Union, which to American elites and military and captains of industry was a much bigger threat than the Nazis or fascism ever were. After that war, a now superpowered America began to take an interest in Iraq as well.
Well, so that was what America really cared about in the Middle East at that moment, was using Iraq as a bulwark against the influence of
Communism and socialism. What can we do about it?
Every part of the world was going to be a front in our fight against the Red Menace, which is pretty rich because, say, for example, in the Middle East, in the late 50s, the Soviets proposed a moratorium on any meddling in the region. This included an embargo on weapons, pulling out all troops, closing all bases. And they offered this more than once, and the Western powers patiently listened to this pitch and responded.
How about new?
So by the end of the 50s, Iraq functions as an outpost of British imperialism, a front in America's Cold War, and a valuable holding of the international oil cartel.
How did this work out for, let's say, I don't know, people of Iraq?
Yeah, not good. Aside from a class of local collaborators with the British, Iraq was incredibly impoverished. Not that it was a poor country. It was generating loads of wealth. It's just that all that was going to the American and British oil companies. Meanwhile, actual Iraqis lived in squalor. Their government didn't care about them. Infant mortality was 250 per thousand. There were no social services of any kind, and life was getting grimmer all the time. So maybe that's why, in July 1958, the Iraqis had decided enough was enough. It was time for a revolution, and the British-sponsored monarchy went down.
Without warning, revolution has swept away the young King Faisal of Iraq.
Explosive news from the Middle East. A military coup and mob revolt in Iraq topples King Faisal.
Iraq becomes #1 danger spot.
People rose up all over the country, but the vanguard of this 1958 revolution was a free officer corps, a bunch of military nationalists, whose leader was a guy named General Qasim. Qasim was really imitating Nasser, the president of Egypt, who had done something similar in his country a couple years before. And Nasser is important here because he's the poster boy, the avatar of anti-colonial pan-Arab politics in the Middle East.
Oil-rich Iraq, so vital to the Baghdad Pact, is, temporarily at least, in anti-Western hands.
Meanwhile, back in America, President Ike Eisenhower and Vice President Richard Nixon held their breath and were preparing for a possible American military intervention to prevent any gains by the local Iraqi Communist Party. The Iraqi Communists called for provisions of bread, withdrawal of all foreign troops, democratic freedoms, things like that. One U.S. diplomat on the ground in Iraq wrote that the Communists had support because they, quote, had worked very hard and were extremely well organized.
Veteran Premier Nouri S. Said is deposed. He has fled, and the Republican rebels have offered £10,000 for his arrest.
So this guy, the prime minister, when the revolution finally came, he tried to flee, and he was shot in the street, and his body was rolled over by trucks until it was a fine pink paste. People just kept running him over until he was, like, pink mist.
Like with like a steamroller? Or just
No,
like
it was like the Naked Gun with Ricardo Montalban.
My father went the same way.
So this understandably made the British and American governments pretty nervous. So they dispatched troops to friendly countries within the region. The basic fear was that revolutions like the one that had just happened in Iraq would continue to crop up and spread, and then unite under Nasser. Remember, Nasser was the first among equals in this anti-colonial movement that was happening in the Middle East. And that pretty soon, all of the friendly governments to Britain and America would be overthrown.
Only one thing is certain. The Kremlin is jubilant. Khrushchev was quick to see in Nasser the leader who could weld the Arab world into anti-Western unity.
Now, it's in this moment that we meet two characters of our story, sort of the Batman and Joker, who were found on opposite ends of this revolution.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a bot.
Saddam Hussein was 21 in 1958, the year of the revolution, and he had grown up in the country, in the middle of Iraq. He was a country boy near the city of Tikrit. And it was a lot like the country anywhere. A lot of people carried guns wherever they went, and local loyalties and connections counted for a lot. And a year before the revolution, Saddam had joined an up-and-coming political movement called the Ba'ath Party. And let's pause here to talk about what the Ba'ath was, because it's going to become very significant to our story. The Ba'ath Party was in a couple countries in the Middle East. They'd eventually split off and have rivalries. And their ideology was just kind of a hodgepodge, you know? It was a little bit nationalism, pan-Arabism, it was a little bit socialism, That's not to say communism, because if the Ba'ath was one thing, it was anti-communism.
Yeah, that was the glue that held them together and ultimately formed the base of their support from abroad and internally, was the fact that they were the most effective anti-communists.
I killed a communist before. Or for a green card. I'm gonna carve him up real nice.
And they weren't really ever a popular party.
And they didn't claim to be a popular party.
Yeah, its message was that of renaissance for the Arab world, and it would have cells that would come to power, you know, of Ba'ath parties.
Right, and this included like military officers and people from the professional and upper classes, but it was not a mass movement.
Yeah, that's true. And the ideology, we'll see, is going to twist and turn and largely end up serving the leaders of the Ba'ath party rather than the other way around. For his part, Saddam later said that he became a nationalist and not a communist because social divisions where he grew up were not that significant. Quote, "I never felt at a social disadvantage, even I, a peasant's son." Now, the Ba'ath party are going to turn big time on General Qasim. But in these heady days of July 1958, they're still basically on the same side, kicking out the hated British puppet regime. So while Saddam was cutting his teeth in this new revolutionary political situation by joining the Ba'ath Party, the man who would one day flatter the Bush administration into war with Iraq in 2003 was having a very different experience of the revolution. Ahmed Chalabi was born in Baghdad in 1944, and he grew up about as far from Saddam's circumstances as you could probably get. He was the 9th and final child of an incredibly prominent, wealthy Shia business family, and his father had connections with the British and the monarchy and Shia leaders all throughout Iraq. Chalabi was 14 when the revolution broke out in Iraq, and his biographer, Aram Rostin, writes that at this time, Chalabi was pampered, happy, and studious. And he never saw the squalor and misery that his fellow Iraqis were living under that we described before. Rostin writes, from his childhood perspective, waist-high to the wealthy and well-educated, this Iraq was an eclectic and tolerant place. So for young Chalabi watching it all come crashing down with this revolution, it sparked his lifelong obsession, not only to restore this fictional Iraq of his memories, but to be the one in charge of it next time. And a relative told Chalabi's biographer, if you're looking for Rosebud, like Citizen Kane, look to the 1958 revolution. Because much as they wanted it, Chalabi and his family did not get their American invasion that year. But he'd spend the rest of his days working on that. So by the end of the 50s, we've seen Iraq go from being a British possession to becoming an independent state under the nationalist military regime of General Qasim. Unfortunately for Qasim, he didn't really end up pleasing anybody during his short few years in power. He pissed off the Americans and the British by nationalizing a lot of Iraqi oil. He also pissed off the Ba'ath Party by not going far enough and being more revolutionary like Nasser. And he also pissed everyone off by having communist friends in and out of government because he needed a popular base of support to do the things he wanted to do.
We should also probably mention that at this point, Baghdad is skirmishing, if not outright going to war, with the Kurds.
And let's, for people who don't know, let's clarify who the Kurds are in Iraq.
The Kurdish people are a cultural and ethnic minority that live mostly in northern Iraq, but there are Kurdish people in Syria and Iran and other countries in the region. Yeah.
And we'll see all types of horrific confrontation between Baghdad and the Kurds coming up. But at this point, they're kind of on the same side as everyone else, including the Ba'ath, in wanting to get rid of Qasim. Hard cut, October 7th, 1959, you have a dashing, let's just be honest, we've seen the photos from him
in
the books. He's looking good.
He looks really good.
A dashing young Saddam Hussein, who at this point is 22, with a machine gun in hand, in Baghdad, downtown Baghdad, waiting for Qasim's car to come rolling down the street. And he's part of a larger kill team of 6 other guys, and they're going to really do the deed, but he's going to provide cover for his comrades.
And to be clear, I don't believe that he was actually supposed to be there in the original plan.
That's true. He was a last-minute call-up.
Yeah, he was like somebody
true.
got sick.
Yeah.
And he was the guy that they pulled up. So like these were not like, CIA trained expert death squads. This was
rather amateurish.
Yes. This was the JV team of coup plotters.
Yeah. It was so amateurish, in fact, that they didn't kill Qasim.
And who did they kill instead?
They killed one of their own guys.
As Adil Darwish and Gregory Alexander talk about it in their book, Unholy Babylon, they were organized around the car, and they pulled out their guns, and they started shooting. The aim was terrible, which is like explains why there were some people caught in their own crossfire.
Right.
But also there were guns that jammed.
Right.
So the whole thing, from the moment that they tried to carry out this assassination attempt on Qasim, went to shit.
Instant fail. So Qasim was hit, though. He was hit in the shoulder and the arm, and he was pretty gravely wounded. He ended up surviving. His driver did not. Saddam, probably through his own partners, was hit in the leg. And he scrambles, he flees. We know he was being hunted by the intelligence services, and he escaped to Cairo through Syria. And there he was remembered alternatively by different people as a stoic straight edge, and a troublemaker and a deadbeat. And again, who's to say? Notably, Palestinian journalist Saeed Aburish believes that this is around the time when he was in Cairo, Saddam became in touch with the local CIA station to further any general kind of plans or schemes against Qasim.
Well, yeah, because even though this hit didn't work, the CIA still wanted him gone. The Baathists wanted him gone.
Correct.
Other Arab leaders wanted him gone.
Let's whack this cocksucker and be done with it.
In spring of '62, John F. Kennedy asked the CIA to begin plotting for Qasim's overthrow. And, I don't know how exactly that conversation went down.
Ask not what the Baath Party can do for you, but what you can do for the Baath Party.
Something like that, yeah. Now, Kennedy's go-to man was Archie Roosevelt Jr., who was one half of a CIA spook brother duo with Kim Roosevelt, who engineered the coup in Iran in 1953, which is a real dream team brother.
The Kubi brothers.
Yeah. And by the way, look up their photos. They both look like absolute freaks.
Wait, hold on. Let me. Can I pull this up?
Yeah, you can pull it up.
All right.
I'm going to keep going. The CIA's Health Alteration Committee, which is that's a real thing, sent a poison handkerchief to Qasim, or some people say one of his colonels, in an attempt to send a message.
That handkerchief did an Egyptian to my mother give.
What happened next will shock you.
The streets of ancient Baghdad become the scene of a short but decisive revolution that topples the pro-communist government of Premier Abdel Karim Qasim.
February 1963, on Ramadan, military officers allied with the Ba'ath carried out a temporarily successful coup. But it was successful enough that they executed Qasim on live TV.
Well, it's the hallmark of any successful coup, really.
Right. Once you have TV in the picture, you got to do the execution. And his corpse was buried in a shallow grave and chewed up by dogs. So the Ba'ath Party had arrived. Now, the big question here, how involved was the CIA in the overthrow of Qasim and the rise of the Ba'ath Party? Because this is the ascension of Saddam Hussein's party, the one that he will take over and then rule Iraq for the next several decades until the Americans invade in 2003. So if we had anything to do with helping them or installing them, that'd be pretty fucking goofy, wouldn't it? This is what a Ba'ath Party secretary said in an interview in the 90s. Quote, "We came to power on a CIA train." James Critchley, who was once the CIA's head of the Middle East at the time of the coup, quote, "We watched the Ba'ath's long, slow preparation to take control. We really had the T's crossed on what was happening. We regarded it as a great victory." And they had definitely developed assets by 1961, of which Saddam was probably a junior example. And this is an anecdote, but a friend of mine who's from Kurdistan, he said his dad saw a friend of his or an acquaintance of his at like the market one day back in the 60s. And the guy was like, yeah, hey, I actually just joined the Ba'ath Party. And, these are people who are members of the ethnic minority. And so his dad was like, what the fuck? Why would you do that? They're Arab nationalists. They hate us. And he went, well, I did it because I'm getting a stipend from the CIA now. So I think...
I subscribe to the CIA's Patreon.
Yeah. The presence of the CIA, I think we can definitely say, was confirmed at the very least. And one thing is for sure, which is that when the coup was complete, Ba'athist death squads rolled up their sleeves and began, as the British put it, quote, winkling out the communists.
The new government, which promises a modification of Qassem's bitterly anti-British, anti-American, and anti-Nasser policies, has been emptying the jails of political prisoners and replacing them with communists, rounded up since the revolution.
Up to 5,000 were killed following the coup in 63, and about 15,000 rounded up in total. And the new Ba'ath government worked with the Iraqi Petroleum Company in sending political prisoners to concentration camps.
When they are found, the communists from other countries are deported. Native Reds are sent before firing squads. As the Arabs show, they are more concerned about the dangers of communism than is realized.
A U.S. diplomat put it a little more sociopathically. Quote, we were very happy. They got rid of a lot of communists. A lot of them were executed or shot. This was a great development.
So while all this is going on in Iraq, like the Ba'aths have taken power and like Qasem is gone and they're going to work on the communists, like where's Saddam?
Saddam at this point has arrived back in Iraq from Cairo.
Back in Iraq, back in the New York groove, back in the Baghdad groove.
Saddam at this point had arrived back in Iraq, and he was now starting to climb the party ladder. There's tell from both his own myth-making and then the myth-making of his enemies that he was like presiding over the torture rooms and putting people in acid and stuff. And I don't know if we can, again, trust either rather cinematic telling of what he was doing around this time. We do know that around this time he married his lovely wife, Sajida, and they started what would become a very close-knit and loving family.
Because a man who doesn't spend time with his family can never be a real man.
Whatever the degree of CIA involvement, the U.S. government made contact with the Ba'ath hours after the coup and pledged recognition for the new regime. And in April, we started shipping them arms, which the Ba'ath would use to hack away at the Kurds. By this time, the Soviets were providing support for the Kurds against Baghdad, which made the Kennedy administration back the Ba'ath party even more than they otherwise would have. And that summer, the USSR actually suspended military aid to Iraq, and they went to the UN and called the Ba'ath Party a fascist, quote, regime that was committing, quote, genocide, which, of course, are charges that rather insincerely we're going to hear from the U.S. decades and decades later after this instance of us completely supporting them. Okay, I call this segment, What the Christ is Wrong with the Kurds, Bob? Because
NBC News projected Richard Nixon, the 37th president of the United States.
In 1968, the Ba'ath Party took power again, as did Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger.
Having lost a close one 8 years ago and having won a close one this year, I can say this: winning's a lot more fun.
The big picture at this moment is that the British are getting out of the Gulf states, winding down imperial commitments.
Mm-hmm.
Nasser is dead in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
Sadat is who takes his place in Egypt.
Right.
And it's largely a reaction to Nasser, his assumption of power, and he expels a bunch of the Nasserites. So Pan-Arabism is no longer
on the wane.
It's not the force that it once was.
Yes.
R.I.P. Shout out.
Yes.
Moscow, meanwhile, is like retaining influence in a couple different pockets in the region, but functionally, the story is still one of what the Americans are then doing.
Yes.
It means that they have to find their boys.
Yes. And one of those boys is definitely going to be the Shah of Iran.
You know that fat cocksucker says I look like the Shah of Iran?
I never got that at all.
That piece of shit.
His Imperial Majesty Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi of Iran begins a 3-day visit to Washington.
U.S. presidents from Kennedy to Carter regarded the Shah as the ideal ruler to secure the interests of the West in the Gulf area, now that the British had left.
The portrait of Iran today, especially today, is that of the Islamic Republic, but that did not yet exist in the Nixon years. Iran was still a secular monarchy and a dictatorship, thanks to our coup that we did there in 1953. So under the Nixon doctrine, the Shah was a great partner of the U.S. He was also a huge piece of shit.
Demonstrators protest outside the West Berlin Opera House, where the Shah of Iran with Empress Farah attends the performance of Mozart's Magic Flute. Denouncing the Shah as a murderer who arrests, tortures, and kills political opponents, the crowd clashes with Berlin police.
During the Nixon years, and in fact beyond his resignation, Kissinger in the 70s pursued a policy of triangulation, between Iran and Iraq, who both hated each other and were sniping over pieces of territory and access to the Gulf, and the Kurds, to whom we gave a shitload of money and guns and outright encouragement in their war against Baghdad for independence. The Shah loved this because it was a way to tie down and embarrass his neighbor and rival in Iraq.
For the past 6 years, Galala has been on constant alert for the daily whine of Iraqi jets overhead. It's the main supply center for the Kurdish warriors, or Peshmergas as they call themselves. The name means those who are prepared to die, and hundreds of them have died for what they now call the liberated area of Kurdistan.
But in early 1975, Saddam, who is now the clear strongman in Iraq, even though he was still technically number 2, slipped to Algiers with the Shah, and with American mediation, the two hammered out a deal to play nice and stop sniping at each other. This was a big victory for everybody except for the Kurds, who were on the eve of facing a brutal campaign from Baghdad. And after all those years of being encouraged and supported by the U.S. and the Shah, their former benefactors said, oops, gotta go, and left them to slaughter.
Little Paulie was good to go. Fucking car never came. They left him waiting outside his house like an asshole.
What was the U.S. saying about Saddam in the 70s? Like, what was Saddam actually doing at this moment domestically?
He was increasingly taking hold of the right levers of power that you would need if you ever wanted to, say, stab your boss in the back in 1979 and take over. But more broadly than that, Saddam was one piece of a very successful, it has to be said, Ba'ath administration in the 70s. Iraq, through no shortage of oil wealth, but also some quasi-socialism that was well administered by the party, it became probably the most dynamic and, if you like, progressive state in the Arab world. And I'm just going to real quick throw it to our friend Raed. He's an Iraqi political advocate and activist who we've interviewed for a lot of different things on this show. Here he is talking about this version of Iraq that used to exist.
The economy was blooming there. Iraq was becoming a major regional power. So things were stable. There was definitely political dictatorship. But outside of politics, life was okay. The government provided Iraqis with basic services. Iraq had one of the best education systems, one of the best health systems in the region.
It basically just became one of those success stories of a third world country, post-colonial, that managed to turn its natural resource wealth into a thriving economy. And one thing Saddam did visibly, even though he was still at this point only number 2 in the party, is that he fully wrenched the Iraqi oil reserves away from Western companies. And so that was a hugely populist and nationalist move that he would be dining out on for the rest of his days. There was also a CIA memo to talk about what the Americans thought. They say he's a shrewd, ruthless operator, adept at keeping his opponents off balance.
I feel like there's somebody we should check in on.
Yes, Ahmed Chalabi. In the 70s, while all this stuff was going on back in Iraq, he had moved to Lebanon and had become a professor at the American University of Beirut. And he was a mathematician. And he's apparently quite bright in this field. But the Lebanese civil war that was raging in the 70s started to get a little bit too hot for him, and he packed up and left and took up his real birthright as one of the many corrupt children running the Chalabi banking empire. He relocated to Jordan and founded a bank called Petra Bank. And in 1978, the bank's assets were $40 million, and by 1982, they were $400 million. A tenfold increase. And he built a big mansion and started to make friends with a lot of Western journalists and think tank people and politicians, many of whom will come in handy in the Rolodex several years later. But one person in Petra Bank recalled during its boom times, you could determine something was not kosher. This will all erupt next episode. Suffice to say, not for the last time, Chalabi had shed his skin and gone from professor to one of the most powerful economic influencers in the Middle East. So, by 1979, Saddam has a peace deal with the Shah and another campaign against the Kurds behind him, warming relations with America, particularly with the CIA, which, oh, look at that, was run by George H.W. Bush, whose son W around this time was Around this time, I think forming an energy company with bin Laden's brother. So starting to come into his own. But Saddam, this is when he really became the man he'd be for the rest of his life. It was the year that he made his big move. It was July 1979, and he simply approached Hassan al-Bakr, who was his cousin.
He's the guy, even he's the head of the Ba'ath Party. He's the de facto head of state.
President Ahmed al-Bakr has become little more than a figurehead, and according to Saddam's propagandists, too old and ill to govern.
And Saddam told him, you look ill. You should really take it easy, and let me cover the presidency for you. I think you'll be better that way. And Bakr was like, no, I feel fine. Oh.
I have to go now.
What happened next is referred to as the Ba'ath Party Purge, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Saddam called an emergency assembly of Ba'ath Party officials and leaders. He sat in a crowded hall at the front of the room, chomping a big cigar, and informed everybody that regrettably he had discovered the existence of a Syrian-backed plot inside of the Iraqi Ba'ath Party to overthrow him and the legitimate leadership of the country. Out was trotted an unfortunate man who, behind the scenes, had opposed Saddam's seizure of power. Clearly having been tortured, he read from a piece of paper a confession that he had indeed been part of a plot. And this was all spooky enough, but then he began to read off a list of names of people who were in the hall who were supposed co-conspirators. And this was all videotaped.
Some protest their innocence, but are quickly hauled away. Others in the assembly begin to weep and chant proclamations to his greatness and declare absolute loyalty to his rule.
Good evening from Baghdad. One of the world's oldest cities has become one of the world's newest power centers. As soon as major hostilities broke out between the two oil producers, Iraq and Iran, we came here to Baghdad to watch OPEC at war, to look in particular at a regime seeking supremacy in the Gulf, and at its remarkable president, Saddam Hussein, one of the least known but most effective rulers in the Middle East.
As Saddam's rise to power in Iraq in the 1970s was being cemented, things were getting dicey for America's best friend in the region, the Shah of Iran. As Iran's urban population was exploding, rents were getting higher, inflation was becoming a bigger problem, and civil services more generally across the country began breaking down.
Although Iran bought into Western companies and invested millions in Asia and Africa, many Iranians remained poor and illiterate. Agricultural performance was low, industrial productivity disappointing. In the towns, the pockets of poverty were obvious. Sheep wandered among the debris of over-rapid urbanization.
These were the conditions in which the Islamic Revolution in Iran took place.
Residents, revolutionaries, soldiers, driving through the streets, waving pistols, rifles, machine guns. The end of Iran's monarchy came early today when Khomeini's followers took control of the palace of the Shah.
On the 16th of January, 1979, the Shah left Iran. He was never to return.
Led by Shiite clerics, religious conservatives for the most part, but representing a broader coalition across society, they took the place of the Shah in 1979.
For Khomeini, the flight from Paris to Tehran marked the end of 15 years in exile. In an obvious reference to the United States, he said, "Foreign advisors have ruined our culture and have taken our oil."
Saddam saw an opportunity for himself. On September 22nd, 1980, about a year after the revolution, Saddam, after a few weeks of lower-level skirmishes, finally pulled the trigger on an invasion. The immediate justification for the war was control over the Shatt al-Arab waterway, which is what divides Iran from Iraq and Iraq's southeast. Although Iraq and Iran had signed that 1975 agreement that we mentioned earlier, and that agreement had put the border squarely down the middle of the waterway, that was practically ancient history to Saddam by 1980, given that the Shah was no longer running Iran. In fact, it was Ayatollah Khomeini who was running Iran.
Why did either of them want the waterways so badly?
I mean, it leads out into the Persian Gulf, and it's an incredible and important conduit for oil shipping routes. They thus control a huge conduit for the most valuable natural resource that dictates both of these national economies. This maneuver was a response to perceived threats on Saddam's end. Iraq is mostly a Shia country, and Saddam is part of a Sunni sect that rules the country, and thus it's natural that he's kind of terrified of a Shia revolution next door. While there was never the same kind of energy to follow Khomeini's revolution in Iraq, there were still religious elements that were calling for an uprising. In fact, Muqtada al-Sadr, who is the cleric in Iraq today with a huge populist following, his father-in-law called for an uprising in 79, not so that Iraq could become like a client state of Iran and they could be best friends with Khomeini and the clerics in Iran specifically, but it was obviously dynamically they wanted something similar, and he wanted it for Iraq, and Saddam put him to death.
Yeah, this is an early look at what will become a very key part of this show, which is from literally one generation of al-Sadrs to the next, the oppression and radicalization of certain Iraqi Shia groups and leaders, all of whom Saddam considered subversive.
And, there's also a kind of general sense among Arab leaders throughout the Persian Gulf at this moment who are looking at Iran and are thinking, fuck, what if I'm next? Because this was a Shia power center that was not under the control of their friend and benefactor, the U.S.
Certainly the United States was not happy to see the emergence of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
No. And if you're Saddam and you are looking to prove that you are somebody that the U.S. wants to engage with and that the U.S. wants to invest in and nurture and support, then going after the people at the top of the U.S.'s shit list is probably a good way to do it. And whoever wins this war gets to be the dominant power in control of, effectively oil distribution networks in the most critical space of oil production in the entire world. And that's obviously no small prize.
So the stars are basically aligned against Iran here, particularly for Saddam to make a move with the acquiescence, if not outright encouragement, behind closed doors of the United States.
Yes, and the UN, when the Security Council convened in September immediately after the invasion happened, the Western powers intervened quickly to prevent the Security Council from putting out a statement that would have actually directly condemned Saddam. The Iranians, obviously not incorrectly, began to think like, everybody's putting their thumb on the scale against us, which actually would later turn out during the hostage crisis and the occupation of the American embassy in Tehran, that the Iranians would actually find intelligence that would actually later go on to confirm their suspicions about what the U.S. Really supported here, even if publicly everybody was saying like, oh geez, what a pickle this is.
Right.
Iranian resistance crumbled in the early days to the advancing Iraqis. There are signs now that they might not be having it all their own way, but in this sector at least, the Iraqis are jubilant.
Initially, it seemed like the Iran-Iraq war might actually be a short one. The word blitzkrieg gets used a lot to describe Saddam's strategy. Saddam actually, in fact, had hoped to emulate the Israelis, who, because of really, really smart air power usage in 1967, were able to win the Six-Day War in 6 days. But the Iran-Iraq war would become, it's the closest that we're ever probably going to come to a second version of World War I. Generally, the line that's used to describe the Iran-Iraq war is that it was the longest conventional war of the 20th century. Now, these initial air attacks that Saddam wanted to use to punish Iran, they didn't work. And so then Saddam switched and changed the focus to a 100,000-man strong ground offensive, which was stopped by the Iranians at a certain point, who had also studied the Israelis and had studied where the Israelis had screwed up in the Yom Kippur War and had been able to stop Saddam's advance. And so what was initially supposed to be like this Saddam week-long victory campaign thing, it did not turn out that way.
A dawn raid by Iranian jets, signaling that Iraq does not have it all its own way in this war.
By late October 1980, about a month after Iraq first invaded, the war had reached a stalemate, and a month after that point, Iran had begun successfully executing a naval blockade of Iraq. So rather than risk losing standing, Saddam committed himself to what would become this long, drawn-out war.
You gotta commit.
Exactly. There was no backing down. The Iranians launched a counteroffensive to take back what territory they had lost, and Iranian-backed Kurds opened up a new front of war against Saddam.
Right, in the north of Iraq.
As is always the case with the Kurds in Iraq and Iran-Iraq tensions, the Kurds are re-weaponized precisely at the point at which it becomes convenient for somebody to do that. As this is going on, there's obviously like a whole other series of like geopolitical tensions and concerns with Iraq, the biggest of which is about Iraq's efforts to acquire a nuclear weapon, which they were doing with the help of the Italians, but primarily the French. And in 1981, Israel, which was the biggest hater of Iraq's nuclear program as the only other existing nuclear power in the Middle East, bombed and destroyed Iraq's nuclear reactor called Osirak in June of 1981. And ironically, destroying Iraq's nuclear ambitions, at least at that point, proved to be incredibly important for the Iraqis. The French historian Pierre Rousseau had this to say about it, quote, "It was only once Iraq lost any hope of having nuclear power, thereby limiting the risks of proliferation in the region, that Washington and Moscow considered reestablishing their ties with Baghdad. Because up until then, you know, another desperate nuclear power in the Middle East was not something that either Moscow or Washington really wanted to deal with." That changed. But even before Osirak, there was, in the bombing, there were signs that Washington was warming up to Saddam because of the invasion. In 1981, for example, William Eagleton, an American diplomat in Iraq, wrote in a cable to Washington, to the recently elected Reagan government, saying that, quote, "We now have a greater convergence of interests with Iraq than at any time since the revolution of 1958. A year later, the State Department would remove Iraq from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. Woo. And, you know, when after the Osirak bombing happened, King Hussein of Jordan, you know, probably the West's favorite, you know, like still existing colonial ruler functionally, he got in touch with Saddam and let him know that the West would be opening to a general softening of relations. And Moscow started delivering dozens of fighter planes to Iraq that it had previously held up. So by 1982, there had been an Iranian counteroffensive that kind of brought this war to this place of stalemate. And it's at this point that we should probably talk about the gas.
Mustard gas and nerve agents were delivered by small, innocent-looking planes based near Baghdad. At first, the scale of its use surprised the Iranians, who were forbidden by Ayatollah Khomeini from following suit.
Beginning in 1983, Iraq had begun using deadly gas attacks against Iran, starting with mustard gas, which you might know about from World War I. Between 1983 and 84, Donald Rumsfeld, a guy, he made 2 visits to Iraq, part of the Reagan administration's efforts to beef up its relationships with Saddam's regime.
Here's Rumsfeld later talking about it.
Iran had taken hostages, our American people in the embassy, and it seemed logical to President Reagan and Secretary Shultz and to me that we ought to at least try to develop a better relationship with Saddam Hussein.
During Rumsfeld's second trip to Iraq in March 1984, a United Nations report was released, and it concluded that Iraqi forces had begun using chemical weapons in the fight against Iran.
We had a good visit, and shortly thereafter we did reestablish relationships with Iraq.
The Americans, they were not only okay with Iraq's use of chemical weapons, but they would actually later provide intelligence to Iraqis to help them use those chemical weapons more effectively.
We also sold him chemical weapons.
Yes. The Iraqis got this capacity in the first place for chemical weapons from the West. Part of this was because of steps that Saddam had taken to, quote, desocialize the Iraqi economy, moving it away from a centrally planned economic model and letting in Western businesses. And as part of this, and as this general trend, Iraq began developing very expansive business relationships with all sorts of Western companies that would sell him the stuff that he wanted to buy. So just a short list of the countries that would sell him this, like, arms and stuff, you know. It includes...
This isn't going to be good.
No. It's West Germany, Spain, Britain, France, Norway, Italy, Switzerland, Austria, and the Netherlands. Germany's actually a particularly funny case because the West German government would sell chemical weapons and materials to Iraq, and then they would sell the protective gear against those things to the Iranians.
Yeah, and for America's part, in the mid-'80s, the U.S. Commerce Department rubber-stamped shipments to Iraq of anthrax and insecticides, which everyone knew was being used for chemical weapons. That was discovered in a Senate Banking Committee report in the 90s.
The UK is also kind of funny too, because basically a British Iraqi arms scheme would later bring down the Tory government of John Major in the 1990s and thus create the opening for a certain man named Tony Blair. Who had some business with Saddam Hussein many years later. And look, we backed Saddam Hussein to the hilt and cared a lot about him, but also we let the Israelis sell weapons to Iran.
Yeah, we should mention that while this is a tough section because there's so many layers happening here.
Yeah.
Because let's see here. You have the U.S. giving Iraq intelligence and arms and chemical weapons so they can fight their enemy, Iran. Then you have Iran-Contra, where we sell Iran arms so we can use the money to fund right-wing death squads in Nicaragua. Then our ally, Israel, bombs Iraq to destroy their nuclear capabilities. But then we also give Iran intelligence facilitating Israel sees Iran so that they can use their Islamic Republic. But none of this is really contradictory at the end of the day, because ultimately the goal of the U.S. is not for anyone to triumphantly win, but for both Iraq and Iran to end up exhausted and weak and ultimately still under the thumb of American global domination.
Eventually, however, the U.S. started to put its thumb on the scale on behalf of Iraq. American satellites had actually picked up Iranian troop movements in 1987, suggesting a substantial Iranian offensive would be coming the following spring, aimed directly at a major hole in the Iraqi front lines. The hole would have allowed the Iranians to perhaps capture Basra, Iraq's largest city close to the Persian Gulf, and it would have given Iran control of the oil fields and the shipping routes that the war was initially started over in the first place. A retired Air Force colonel told journalists many years later that he'd seen a direct message on the subject written by Reagan himself, and it said an Iranian victory is unacceptable. After supplying Iraq with valuable intelligence on Iranian targets, mapping out what the Iraqis would need to do to attack Iran, Saddam launched a sarin gas attack on Iranian forces, and it worked. From 1987 onward, the use of chemical weapons would actually explode. In fact, CIA estimates suggest that 2/3 of all Iraqi chemical weapons used came after that year until the war ended the next year. By March 88, Iraq would actually go farther than it ever had before in its brutality. A key front while all this is going on for the Iran-Iraq war is the Kurdish front. This is northern Iraq. Different Kurdish factions had different relationships of varying warmth with Iran. Left-wing groups were more Iran skeptical, but generally speaking, the Kurds were, as ever, caught between Iran and Iraq. And as the war drew on, the Kurdish front along Iraq's northeastern border with Iran became a very particular area of focus for Saddam. In 87, Saddam launched the Anfal campaign, which is now pretty much commonly described as a genocide against the Kurds. Estimates generally put the number of Kurdish dead at between 50,000 and 100,000 people. Though the Anfal campaign came toward the end of the Iran-Iraq war and was prompted by Iranian military action, it was the latest in a series of Ba'athist efforts, like a kind of Saddam effort to Arabize, quote-unquote, Iraqi cultural and ethnic minorities like the Kurds, the Assyrians, and Yazidis.
Why would the Iraqis do it to the Iran people?
They did it to us also. To us is okay. We are enemies. Okay, we are fighting together. But why to his own people?
In March of 88, the Iranians had made a pretty substantial push to damage Iraqi electrical infrastructure in this region near the Kurdish front, and they actually made it pretty far before being beaten back by Iraq. In response to Iran's limited success, Saddam decided that a show of fear was necessary. Saddam ordered Hassan al-Majid, a cousin of his who was in charge of these Kurdish regions, to raise the small Kurdish city of Halabja, which is located a few miles west of the Iraqi-Iranian border. Between 3,000 and 5,000 people died from a combination of napalm, sarin gas, mustard gas, tubin gas, and other chemical agents. And Halabja would ultimately be the thing that actually got the international community to start more loudly declaring for the war to end.
There were countless heartbreaking sights which told stories of how parents had desperately tried to shelter their young from the invisible vapors.
There's another incident that happens around this time that I think is we should talk about. In mid-1988, an American ship struck an Iranian mine laid as part of the, quote, tanker war, this other front of the Iran-Iraq war that was basically fights between and skirmishes between Iraqi and Iranian forces actually in the Persian Gulf. On July 3rd of 88,
the United States this afternoon acknowledged that a missile from an American ship in the Persian Gulf shot down accidentally an Iran Air passenger plane with 290 people on board. All of those people, passengers and crew, believed to have died in the crash.
The U.S. government initially misled reporters about how the plane was brought down, placing the blame on an overenthusiastic Iranian pilot.
We believe that the cruiser USS Vincennes, while actively engaged with threatening Iranian surface units and protecting itself from what was concluded to be a hostile aircraft, shot down an Iranian airliner over the Straits of Hormuz.
Captain, I'm not lying, Captain Will Rogers III, captain in charge of the Vincennes, he was actually awarded a medal for his service in the Persian Gulf after the war was over. And defense officials and journalists have since identified that actually, no, it was Will Rogers who had brought the Vincennes into Iranian waters and that he should have been held responsible for downing of the plane. George H.W. Bush, who was on the campaign trail to run as Reagan's successor at the time, when he was approached about what had just happened, here was how he described his attitude on the situation. Quote, "I will never apologize for the United States. I don't care what the facts are." After some last clashes in the summer of '88 and peace negotiations in New York, the war came to an end. About 180,000 Iraqis and 500,000 Iranians died, and there were about 1.5 million wounded.
Iraq ended the war with a standing army of awesome size, 1 million men under arms, 5 times as many as in 1980. They were armed with the latest rockets, tanks and artillery. But to pay for them, Iraq's economy had been mortgaged to the tune of nearly $100 billion.
The quote that gets thrown around all the time about the Iran-Iraq war is predictably from Kissinger, who, while it was going on, was reported to say, "It's a pity they both can't lose." But in truth, they did both lose. And Saddam had to save face after 8 years by claiming it was a great victory. But in fact, after the war with Iran, Iraq would never be the same. And next week, we're going to look at the final blow that would make sure it would never recover in the Gulf War. But before we close this episode, I just want to mention one more incident that I think is not very well known. Near the end of the war, in May 1987, the Iraqis accidentally struck with 2 missiles a U.S. ship that was beaming intelligence about Iranian troop movements to the Iraqi army. This ended up killing 37 American crewmen. Now, you'd think that, especially given recent events, something like that would result in not only headlines, but also someone getting in trouble in the Persian Gulf. But in fact, Saddam shot off a quick apology to President Reagan and submitted to a brisk inquiry from the Americans. And Reagan decided not even to demand any compensation from Iraq. And why is this? I mean, by this point, we know that Iraqi lives don't matter to these people. We know that Iranian lives don't matter to these people. But here we see that not even American lives, not even troop lives, so sacred normally in our speeches and our culture, they don't matter either. Because it's just business. And I want to go out here with Reagan speaking at the memorial of the U.S. crewmen who died by the 2 Iraqi missiles. See you next time.
See you later.
Even at moments like these, then, we must address directly the reason the USS Stark and her men were there in the Persian Gulf. You're entitled to know the importance of the role that their valor played in keeping our world safe for peace and freedom. It is a region that is a crossroads for 3 continents and the starting place for the oil that is the lifeblood of much of the world economy. And our role there is essential to building the conditions for peace in that troubled, dangerous part of the world. Our aim is to prevent, not to provoke, wider conflict. So it's a simple truth we reaffirm here today. Young Americans of the USS Stark gave up their lives so that wider war and greater conflict could be avoided.
The time has come for the mother-in-law of all battles. Soon the world would tremble as I, Saddam Hussein, unleash my really neat new armies upon the Mideast. Nothing can stand in my way.
Excuse me, is this the Baghdad Cafe?
In April 1991, after driving Saddam Hussein's army out of Kuwait on the highway of death, Colin Powell, who was then the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the highest ranking military officer in America, he made a confession. He said he was running out of demons, running out of villains. I'm down to Castro and Kim Il-sung, he complained.
Yeah, and his swagger there makes a lot of sense, you know, because we're in 1991. The Cold War is basically over. The Soviet Union's collapsing. The U.S. just thrashed an uncooperative ex-lackey in Saddam, and America was sending the message. There will be no more struggle, no more debate, no more alternatives. Everybody, allies, enemies, are going to get in line, kiss the ring, and enjoy their participation in the global marketplace.
We have to provide food and shelter for the homeless and oppose racial discrimination and promote civil rights while also promoting equal rights for women. We have to encourage a return to traditional moral values. Most importantly, we have to promote general social concern and less materialism.
We thought we had gotten rid of the demon of Saddam.
We made an example of him.
We made an example of him. We embarrassed him so thoroughly.
Spanked him.
Just totally, like, beat his ass. But after the Gulf War, this kind of swagger that Colin Powell had, it didn't necessarily last. In fact, Saddam Hussein began dancing in our nightmares. He basically taunted us with his very existence. And Saddam's image bled into the culture, like writ large as well, becoming this new paradigm of the scary evil dictator.
Oh my God, that's Saddam Hussein, the dictator.
Saddam, I am the Dark Ruler, not you.
Relax, bitch. You better seem not hurt.
Little fools. I am the leader of Iraq, the supreme commander, the mighty Saddam Hussein!
Here, have some dynamite down your pants.
After the Gulf War, Saddam, more than anything, represented a loose end, something that the Americans would have to tie up eventually. And until we got there, America, more than anything else, made sure that Iraqi civilians, everyday people, would pay the price until we came to finish the job. Welcome to Blowback.
Speak about this love sign. Speak about this love sign. Speak about this love sign.
Welcome to Blowback, a podcast about the Iraq War. I'm Brendan James.
I'm Noah Coleman.
And this is episode 2, American Psycho. Thanks for joining us. We'll remind you that if you ever feel like binging the show or skipping ahead and not waiting week after week for new episodes like a chump, you can sign up to Stitcher Premium. Go to StitcherPremium.com, and if you use the promo code BLOWBACK, one word, you get a month free of Stitcher Premium access, and that's going to get you all 10 episodes of this show, as well as bonus episodes, a couple of which will only ever be on Stitcher Premium, as well as the rest of the whole Stitcher catalog. So Stitcher Premium, promo code BLOWBACK, binge away. All right, what are we doing?
What would you say, Brendan, if I told you that the Gulf War never actually ended?
I would make the Tim Allen home improvement noise.
As you should. Because the thing is that the Gulf War, you know, it happened. Saddam invaded Kuwait, and the Americans went into Kuwait to kick Saddam out.
Right.
And we chased him, back to Baghdad and everything.
Yes.
And, it's all done.
Okay.
Except the thing is, it wasn't all done. Saddam may have left Kuwait, but we didn't stop fighting Saddam.
They bombed him periodically. They backed a bunch of coups. They did terrorism inside of his country. Basically everything short of going back in with troops on the ground.
But none of that worked.
Right.
And in fact, the ultimate effect of all this was really just to immiserate millions of Iraqis. In this episode, we're going to take a closer look at the Gulf War and what came after.
And I think the reason we want to do a whole episode about this, it's like Iraq War origins. You can't really understand what's going to happen in 2003 without seeing how, A, we started to demonize Saddam in the popular imagination. So by 2003, he was an obvious candidate for big bad besides Osama. And B, more importantly, you have to understand how low we brought Iraq throughout the 90s. We basically took it from what Saddam had made it, which was a troubled but still viable modern society in the Arab world, to a failed state. And a failed state is very easy to pick on, very easy to invade, not so easy to occupy.
Exactly. What we did throughout the 90s, you could look at it as priming the pump for the kinds of wars that more adventurous people, to put it delicately, in charge of the American government would want to do later on.
All right, episode 2, American Psycho.
Mr. Ocean, what we're trying to find out is, was there a reason you chose to commit this crime? Or was there a reason you simply got caught this time?
In the summer of 1989, Ahmed Chalabi, the Iraqi exile and con man that we met last episode, fled his new home of Jordan in the middle of the night. He insisted to everybody he was going on a vacation, but he was never coming back. Why? In the summer of 1989, Ahmed Chalabi, the Iraqi exile and con man that we met last episode, fled his new home of Jordan in the middle of he had helped cause a financial crisis. A couple months earlier, some of his family members' businesses had been busted in Geneva, and now Chalabi was starting to sweat, and for good reason. The economy of Jordan, where he'd been running this bank and living for several years, was in free fall. You know, the 80s were fast times. The Reagan years, obviously, in America, made a grift out of everything. But it also left a hangover in places like Jordan, which was sometimes nicknamed the Gucci Kingdom. And the Central Bank of Jordan now required all private banks to deposit 35% of their foreign money to help stave off a huge crash. Chalabi ran the second largest bank in the country, but he refused to hand over the money and stalled for months. The reason why? Chalabi's books were cooked. The government sent in liquidators flanked by security services. So Chalabi, once presiding over one of the most lucrative banks in the entire Middle East, slips away in the middle of the night into Syria. This was a huge scandal. Chalabi tried to get ahead of the story by calling all the Western journalist friends he'd met, in the 70s and the 80s, first saying it was just a big misunderstanding, and then claiming he was actually framed up by the government of Jordan, who wanted to hand him over to his arch nemesis, Saddam Hussein.
Final question, Mr. Chalabi. When are you going to remove this cloud hanging over you with Jordan about the Petrobank?
That is complete nonsense. I was the victim of a conspiracy in Jordan.
As for the numbers concerning the fraud, here's The Guardian. In 3 main areas, there were huge bad debts, about 80 million, unsupported foreign currency balances at counterparty banks, about 20 million, and money purportedly due to the bank, which could not be found, about 60 million. So the already cash-strapped Jordanian government ended up paying the 200 million owed to the depositors, which staved off an even bigger financial crisis. Chalabi, now 2 times in exile from not only Iraq but from Jordan, took up residence in London. But Ahmed Chalabi was nothing if not pragmatic, and he was quick to set up a new venture. His new income stream would come straight from the American government. Meanwhile, Saddam Hussein was having cash flow problems of his own. You remember last episode, we left it at the conclusion of the Iran-Iraq War, an incredibly bloody, incredibly long, and incredibly expensive conflict that was finally over. And publicly, Saddam accepted victory and congratulations from Arab leaders on winning the war. But privately, Saddam was desperate for a way out of the red. And aside from the obvious human cost, his war with Iran had dealt a huge blow to the Iraqi treasury, the value of the Iraqi dinar, and not to mention the price of oil was pretty low. Insult to injury, this is also around the time his son...
Hey guys, my name is Disney Channel and you're watching...
We've got new merch at the Good Stuff Milk.
So the organization. Hi, mans. How's it going? I created a virus.
got dragged into one of the most bizarre South 32-like rabbit holes ever. If you see anyone respond to my tweets, and you probably will on this one, with the name Amanda, Stompy, or any variation therein, do not interact. Ever heard of the website Rabbits? Apparently it was a site that allowed multiple users to have watch parties for online content. Apparently recently it was shut down after being bought out. However, this Amanda user is dead set on it being linked to child abuse. Anyway, she has a ton, and I mean a ton, of alternate accounts and will spam you endlessly if you mention it. Furthermore, she'll accuse you of supporting pedophiles if you block her because of it. It's just a never-ending negative feedback loop. Anyway, how does this tie to me? Recently, someone made a thread on my subreddit about this and her subreddits, r/stoprabbits news sites, and since then, I've been subjected to this endless spam and borderline harassment by her. If you see her tweets, just block and do not engage for your own sake. Online harassment. A source of mental anguish and a plague on one's happiness. Aside from stalking, I'd say that this is one of the worst things that can happen to someone online. The constant slander, the never-ending negativity by a vulture circling over your head, ready to strike when you decide you're sick of hiding. Yeah, I have an online harasser, and this is my story. What a year. As if prolonged quarantine due to a widespread, unprecedented virus wasn't enough, I was infected with yet another, a different type of virus that just won't go away. If you head to any one of my tweets and look hard enough, you'll find her. And for obvious reasons, her name in this video is not actually her name. The reputation damage that someone can cause with these claims are enough to give anyone crippling anxiety, especially when people are unaware of the context of what's actually happening. It isn't just me either. Mama Max, Mudahar, Loey Lane, and Night Docs have all fallen victim to this online plague and have tried everything in the book to get rid of it. Why is she so hard to get rid of anyway? I mean, honestly, if this is just one person going up against all of us, why is this even a big deal? Don't worry. We've been working behind the scenes, compiling testimonies, constructing dossiers, and noting every single detail that's happened. Some of the things that she's done are enough to land anyone in jail, and her method of keeping her tirade alive is something that I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around. It's safe to say that I've never seen anything quite like it. And tonight, we're going to explore it. So how did I get here? It's a question that I'm sure you all have and have had for quite some time now. It's a bit tricky. Let me take you back. It was a February morning. I was just waking up, sand still in my eyes, and I reached over to check my phone. Among everything else, I noticed I had a few Facebook comments. I opened them up to see what they're about, and damn it, another ARG. If you're unaware, yes, this is a common occurrence. One of the not so great things about covering internet mysteries is that people are compelled to create their own. And they can get spammy. But I digress. I had things to do, and so I went on with my day as per usual. Again. Wait, is this? That person, or person from Facebook seems to be real convinced of something to do with me. The thing about the internets, and what's really getting to me about this, is the fact that when someone like this comes out with such loaded and heavy-handed claims, people are inclined to question it. And some, even if it's just 1%, would be inclined to believe it. This is how rumor starts, and I'm not about to be blamed for something I didn't do. Jesus Christ, what the f was I dragged into? It appears that this is all stemming from one Reddit post about a website named Rabbit that was made to my subreddits. I'm not entirely sure why something so simple could cause such a wildfire for someone, but hell, at this point I hardly even know what Rabbit is, and this post wasn't even made by me. I'll just give it some time. I just want this to go away. I don't need something like this wrecking my headspace. Alright, she ain't letting up. Ryan, what do you want to do? Ignore it. You've got to talk about this. Address it. Ignore it, it'll pass. Address it. Ignore it. Address it, people will understand. You're gonna have to talk about it one way or another. People are wondering what's going on. Just address it. Ignore it, it'll go away. Why are you putting out a statement for something you didn't do? Address it, Ryan. This isn't your problem. Put out a statement. Everyone knows she's lying. Ignore it. Address it. Ignore it. Just address it. Just do it. Here goes nothing. Oh, now she's really mad. From here on, I became target number one, and the next 24 hours were nothing short of a hellish nightmare. Every single person that I publicly interacted with online became added to her growing list of targets as she openly touted on her many subreddits. Scrolling through them is a nonsensical word salad nightmare filled with tweets, my face, connections to rabbits, and even threats. Yeah, for a while there it got personal. Too personal. You won this one, Amanda. You won this one. Privating my Twitter until release of the next video so Amanda can hopefully get off my ass. Normally I'd just leave it be, but she's begun targeting you guys and my loved ones here, and it just doesn't sit right with me. This stuff started about a month ago out of nowhere, and to be clear, I have no idea who she is. I've never used rabbits, nor do I have any intention on making a video on her. I just want this mess to stop. Unfortunately, others that have been harassed have reported her, but the authorities basically say they can't do anything about it. It should also be noted that she began archiving my followers on r/StopRabbits news sites if you sort by new. It's an unfortunate situation all around, and I truly hope she gets help for this. Things got quiet for a while. After a couple weeks under a private Twitter, she seemed to back off a bit. There were a couple of instances of rat accounts getting approved to follow me, but those didn't bother me too badly. I'll admit it was hard forcing myself not to check her subreddits every hour like I'd grown so accustomed to doing. Reading it was an addiction that made me feel like absolute shits because there was nothing I could do about what she was saying. While I was helpless other than blocking and reporting her spam, something about knowing what she was saying about me put me at this strange sense of ease. Like I could somehow control it. Like the feeling that she wouldn't be able to blindside me again. She was in my sights and was living in my head rent-free. But we all know situations like that are nothing but destructive. Other than that though, relatively, things seem to be looking up. Finally. But I am so naive. I couldn't have been more wrong.
You're talking about the That Chapter video?
Yes.
So that was really pretty hard on me, honestly, just because, as you know, that was pretty soon into my start with this whole YouTube thing. And I had somehow miraculously gotten some pretty big people to join in on something that I thought was going to be really fun. Really wanted to do something really fun with Mike from That Chapter. And what was really discouraging was her habit of going after one person and then anyone that person associates with. And so when I tagged everybody in that tweet, I tagged Justin Wang, I tagged, Loey, I tagged Alex Bale, I tagged everybody that was in there, and she immediately latched onto them. And right after that, she became pretty relentless, just as she had been with you and I, on them. And so it felt really awful, because one of the things that you and I have talked about was that this has created a really awkward situation where we're kind of limited in who we can interact with publicly, specifically because of this one sole person who comes after us and anyone that we are friends with, which has kind of isolated us from a group of friends that we hold near and dear.
On the 1st of April 2020, one of my good friends, Night Docs, would release a collaborative video by the name of The Dark Side of That Chapter. While meant to be one massive joke towards our friend Mike, little did he know what it would turn into for him. The upload featured a plethora of other creators along with myself, all jumping in to give Mike some heat for the, quote, bad things that he's done to us over the years. And it was all done in good fun. The thing was, I was a part of it. And I was infected. If Amanda's the virus consuming my life, then this video was the catalyst that unknowingly spread it. Yeah, she started harassing everyone else too.
Okay. My first experience with Amanda was after I had replied to your post, and So I saw your Twitter thread, and I specifically remember that I replied, "I'm so sorry, Rye, like that's crazy." And it was almost immediately after that Amanda started popping up for me. God, where do I even start? I remember she was very vocal about specifically thinking that I had called her crazy, because I replied, of course, to your post saying that the situation was crazy, which I didn't. You know me, I would not just run on the internet and call someone crazy. So she started getting really vocal with me within those coming weeks, and by April, I had to make a statement of my own, and I had to say, listen, when you reply to my tweets, and it's so embarrassing to have to say that to your subscribers, that they are at risk of being harassed by this person. But I had to make my own statement. And since then, I mean, it's just been a mess. As you know, I am an ambassador for various brands, and one of them being Savage X Fenty. They retweet me a lot and show a lot of like my photos and stuff. And I remember she replied under one of their tweets, because I block every account that she has. And that was, I think that's when I realized how serious it was, and that it wasn't just like this person on Twitter stalking me and my friends, essentially. It was like, oh, this can really impact my business. And these are very serious allegations and claims that she's making because I replied to a tweet.
I'm sure each one of them could tell their arc of the story, and I'm pretty convinced that they'd all sound pretty similar to mine. Amanda enters your life without invitation, wreaks havoc, and becomes something that you just need to learn to live with. Police can't do anything. Twitter squashes her accounts, however more just keep popping up. Blocking her doesn't do a damn thing, and interacting with her just makes it worse. This woman has so many accounts on so many different platforms that the sheer scale of the operation she's running is so grandiose that it's incomprehensible. Sun up to sundown, she's on our case, making absolute damn sure that our lives are hell because she's convinced that we're all up to something nefarious. One of the most ironic examples of this comes from one of her many Facebook accounts where she's accusing Max, yes, Mama Max, the vigilante predator hunter, of being a pedophile.
She posted my video on her Facebook and called me to a bunch of people. And my first thought was, fuck this bitch.
And the crazy thing is that people believed it. Unless these are bots, but these accounts go back pretty far. It's weird though, because I've noticed a strange pattern with these people. They're nice to her. Too nice. And I highly doubt that they're oblivious to the torment that she's caused people for years now. Oh yeah, she's been doing this for years. But we'll get to that shortly.
I want to say for the most part, since being a daily uploader and like daily poster, the engagement sort of starts to drown her out. But there were a couple days where like, you know, you go without an upload and she like takes over a comment section and like it pops up, you know, she like upvotes it via her like crazy bot network. And it ends up like showing into like people start asking questions, right? Like, you know, people see the post or like, what do you promote? Like, you know, pedophilia, or are you part of this, like, you know, promotion of a pedophilia network or whatever with your friends? And sometimes at first I didn't bother explaining it, right? Like to a random commenter, I wouldn't, because I just let it happen. I'd let them say it and I wouldn't bother acknowledging it. I'd keep it out of the whole fray. What really got to me was where my mom came up to me and she's like, she asked me, because my mom's my biggest fan on here, so she'll like follow a video, she'll read the comments and shit. Right. And she read the one comment from her, and like, when your family starts asking you if you're, you know, defending of a pedophile, like that's such an awkward conversation. Like, of course it's a no, but it takes away, like, it's just a conversation you don't want to have, because now it's going to be like forever stuck and they're always going to remember it. And it's just like, it pissed me off to the point where it's like, when you have questions, when it starts bleeding into your personal life, yeah, fuck it, dude. There's no, like, the rage that I had built like 100 times over, because I was already aggravated and pissed at her, but now it's like, now it went from like, oh, I'm pissed at you, to now like, I want to fucking bury you. Like, I want to fucking dig a 6-foot hole in the ground and fucking throw you down it. Like, I shouldn't even be saying it, but that's literally how I feel after dealing with her fucking psychoness. Because the thing is, I would chalk it up to someone being fucking crazy, but like, this is like somebody just like This is beyond crazy. This is beyond a fucking illness. This is like malicious as fuck at its core, and that's what I'm getting from her, dude. Fuck it. Fuck her. Fuck Amanda.
Throughout April and May, her reign had spread to multiple fan bases within the internet mystery genre. While things might have seemed like business as normal, the actions we were taking behind the scenes proved otherwise. We began a hunt for information on this person and realized that discussion about her preceded our involvement entirely. I hope you have a snack handy, because we're about to go back. Ladies and gentlemen, let's dive into a rabbit hole.
That's weird.
What's great?
Time to get cut up.
That's what I'd say if I was a doctor.
And welcome to another episode of Hive Mind Jeopardy! 2 boards of trivia and a final Hive Mind Jeopardy question. Today we're going to find out who's smarter, me, Graydon, or you?
Raphael in Fort Worth, Texas.
Let's see how much that fort's worth. Raphael, Texas.
See if everything really is bigger in Texas. It's your brain.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time, all in one place, all on your terms. We'll tell you more about Squarespace later in the video. Thanks, Squarespace. All right, before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe if you want to see more, HiveMindTV.com for our merch, including the new Cartoon Puns poster available now. We also have merch over on Copes.shop. Bunch of stuff over there. Check that out. Pick something up. It's linked in the description along with our Patreon, which is only $5 a month. Best way you can support us, we're doing an exclusive video series every Thursday. There's a new video just for the Patreon members and the YouTube members, which you can join by clicking the join button here on YouTube.
It's as easy as clicking join and joining and paying us $5 $5 a month.
We also have a newsletter, like a newspaper we write here in the office. It comes out every Friday at noon. It's powered by Beehive,
which is a place where bees live.
And also a website for newsletters.
Correcto mundo.
Link in the description. Let's get into this game.
Come on, show me the first board. I'm ready to answer the questions.
All right, DJ Grant, can you please tell us the categories for the first round of Hive Mind Jeopardy?
Today's categories are the following. I love my dog. Answers to this category are song titles involving dog actions/commands. Music theory, conspiracy theories in music. Star vocals, shown a photo of an animated character, name the actor who voices them. Connections, a returning category inspired by New York Times' Connections minigame. Given the 4 words, find a collective connection between them. A game, all games/sports beginning with the letter A. And finally, potpourri. This is our music trivia category.
I absolutely love it. It is going to be such a fun game today, and I'm excited to play against you and prove, finally, that I'm more intelligent.
I hate these categories.
No, you don't.
I don't. I was just joshing you.
Well, you go first, my good friend Graydon.
Why me?
I don't know.
That feels like pity shit.
I mean, if you want me to go first, we can't. It's just got to be one of us.
Star vocals for 3.
Riley.
This is the voice of Steve Buscemi.
That is correct.
Yes. Randall from Monsters, Inc.
I hate that movie.
He's a purple lizard.
I hate monsters.
Do you like ink?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Especially on my girl's body.
Yeah, she's tatted. I love a tatted girl.
Oh, yeah, bad.
Oh, tattoos get me just, worked up.
I want to marry a pirate, bitch.
Pirate? Did pirates have tattoos? I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, they had the anchors and
they
the
were
whales.
Covered in tattoos.
Yeah.
They were badass.
And then they had the eye one.
The patch.
Yeah, that one always looked really, really cool.
It's black.
Let's do another one. And this one I think we're going to do with I Love My Dog for 1.
The Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber's dog freezes to this command. Riley.
I mean, come on, it's got to be stay.
That is correct.
And I want you to stay, and I promise that I never want to stand it to pay.
Oh!
You remember that song?
I am off right now. I'm offline. I'm going to log in.
Yeah. You better log in, because I got a big lead on yo ass.
You got 4 fucking points, pricko.
How many you got?
Zilch.
Yep.
It's better than negative, which you're about to have.
That's not true. Nope, that's not how it works. You can't. Nope, you can't buzz in for me.
Say something.
There's not. Say something. I'm giving up on you.
.com.
Let's do I Love My Dog for 2.
Jay Sean teaches his excitable dog to get off his visitors with this command. Graydon.
Jay Sean.
Our friend Jay Sean, or
who's Jay Sean?
He's a singer.
Okay. Down.
That is correct.
Sick.
Baby, are you down, 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 down? Baby,
are you
down? Whatever. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. All right. 42.
What's A game again?
Sports and games that begin with the letter A.
I like that shit. Show me it for 3.
This arcade version of a popular sport involves a glass divider in the center of a low-friction table. Graydon.
Air hockey.
That is correct.
Low friction. Make it go wiction. Hey, now show me that. I love air hockey, dude.
Air hockey is pretty awesome.
Clink, 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 clink. If it's in a bar, ooh, I will beat the piss out of someone.
Actually, I like it, but it doesn't have a lot of like shelf life for me. I don't like to play it for very long.
Oh, I can do 2 hours on an air hockey table, easy.
Really?
If I'm playing with someone else who's good, because I'm no slouch. I had it in my upstairs, and as a kid, it's reckless.
I like the one that you can like shift the little hockey players down there.
Bubble hockey.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, bubble hockey's awesome.
Yeah, I like
You don't
that.
see that one often either. And there's also the basketball one. You ever seen that?
Oh, yeah.
Where it had just like you can just pop the ball up
Yep.
with like different buttons. That one's really fun, but bubble hockey is elite.
Yeah, totally.
That's fun. Let's keep the good times going.
I love it.
And time for more fun. Show me music theory for 2.
The song Mob Ties, among other reasons, led some fans to believe that Drake put out a hit on this late rapper. Graydon.
This will be XXX Tentacion.
That is correct.
Yes, that's true. Louis bags in exchange for body bags, yeah.
Oh, damn. I wish you'd put a hit out on me, or we'd release that hit.
Well, Drake already released it.
But we should cover it because he's fallen out of public favor. We should just do all Drake covers.
I like that.
It's like, hey, if you don't like him,
Then you might like Passionate from miles away.
yes.
Passion with the things you say.
I can't save you now.
I like it. Yeah. God's plan.
Hey.
God's plan.
She loving the crew.
Yes, she's loving my crew.
All right. Like a sprained ankle, boy, I ain't nothing to play with.
Oh, just like Drake crooner classics.
Kind of.
I think that could be really
Awesome.
nice and good. Yeah.
All right, star vocals for 1.
Graydon.
Fuck, who did this? Hold on. Oh, it's Owen Wilson.
That is correct.
Cars.
Wow.
C-A-R-S. Cars, cars, cars. Cars are cars all over the world.
They're not. Sorry.
You're good, man. Me and my guy. Let's get it. Let's do a game for 1.
The innermost yellow ring in this sport awards 10 points. Graydon.
Oh, nope.
No? What do you mean?
No.
I didn't start with an A.
Nope. It has escaped me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not gonna do it because I don't know. I was gonna say arts.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
thought about saying arts as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the art board. What is it though? Actually.
Go ahead. It's your chance to steal.
Riley.
Archery.
That is correct.
Arrow game.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Shoot an arrow right through me. Ooh yeah. That's wings.
Let's try star vocals for 5.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, what the? I've never even seen this. I don't think.
This seems like you guys typed something into AI.
Yeah, is this Mickey Mouse?
Is this the new Stuart Little? Like Stuart Little grew up to be a con man who
This
like
might-
pimps
yeah.
out other mice.
Is this like Jazz Ratatouille? Jazzatouille?
Jazzatouille.
I don't know.
Yeah, he looks like a con man, and I wouldn't trust him.
I don't like it.
Neither do I. What is it?
This is Seth MacFarlane.
Oh, and Sing.
Yeah, well, we all remember that great one.
I didn't see it. We'll keep it moving. How about I Love My Dog for 3?
Passion Pit's dog loves to do this physical activity. Graydon.
Take a walk.
That is correct.
I just say, yeah, totally.
Take a walk. Take a walk.
Passion Pit from miles away. I can't hear what they say,
but they are so great.
'Cause I'm so far away.
Shout out Passion Pit, man. Y'all were dope.
Still are, in my book.
Nah, not for me, but
In my
whatever.
book, coming out this spring, Why Passion Pit is Still Great.
Yeah,
By
you're
Riley Savage,
Okay.
first-time author.
All right, that's enough plug.
Sorry.
I'm going to choose Potpourri for 4.
This country singer recently split from his fiancée amidst a rumored fling with racist politician Lauren Boebert.
I don't know much about country music, and I don't know much about racist politicians.
Oh, God, that's good. That's rich.
That's a good question.
Boebert? Are you shitting me? That sounds like a clown.
Yeah, Boebert the clown.
Yeah. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I want to guess Kenny Chesney, but I'm not going to.
Riley, are you in?
I am out.
This is Kid Rock.
Oh, he's not really a country musician.
I mean, he is.
He's a rapper. He's one of the best ever. What are you talking about?
Did you fall asleep since the 90s?
I did.
I mean, he did record scratch and rap back in the day.
Okay.
But then he's mostly been a country singer since then.
No shit.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
Let's do a game for 5.
This children's party game has 2 types of cards, green and red. Graydon.
Apples to apples?
That is correct.
You love that game, loser. I think we pressed it at the same time, and the tie goes to the winner.
My
Whoever's
fingers are
winning.
just stronger. I hit the button harder.
I don't think it's not about how hard you press it, it's about how fast you do it.
Just like sex.
No.
Oh, all right. I guess not. I guess fuck me then. Connections for 2.
Testing, Daytona, swimming, Scorpion. Riley.
These are 2018 albums.
That is correct. Rap albums, but yes, I'll give it to you.
Sure. I like that. I like it a lot. I think it's a great category. You guys are fantastic. The crew. Do you mind if I take a second to thank the crew?
Do it.
First, of course, we got to thank DJ Grant over there. He's the one reading the clues. Tony puts the boards together. He's back in the control room over there.
Love him. Great guy.
Clarissa running camera 3 over there. She's been fantastic since she joined the team.
Dumb hot too.
Well, she can't hear you, thank God. But and then we got Edgar over there with the cue cards. What's up, Ed?
Good hooper.
Yeah, he's pretty good. We got Kronk under the table, rubbing our feet.
Dumb hot too.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And then, of course, we got Freddie Fastball over there. Come on, camera 2. Give it up. I love everybody who works here. I love everybody who works here. My board, if that's all right with you.
That's okay.
How about Music Theory for 3?
A bizarre theory alleges that JonBenet Ramsey's death was faked and that she grew up to secretly be this famed pop star. Graydon.
Avril Lavigne?
That is incorrect.
Fuck Grant. Yeah, I'm not going to risk it. Who is it?
This is Katy Perry.
I was nowhere near.
John Mayer's ex-boo thing.
More like John Mayer's ex-boob thing.
Yeah, huge rack.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to do impression of you.
Is Katy Perry related to Tyler Perry?
Yeah.
Nice.
They're both in the entertainment business, so they're related through that.
Oh, colleagues of sorts.
Yes. Peers. Potpourri for 1.
Kendrick Lamar brought out this famed actor during his Super Bowl halftime performance. Riley.
Samuel L. Jackson.
That is correct.
I was going to say Serena Williams.
Yeah, she has been an actor.
Oh, yeah, that new movie. With the Black Girls and Maude Apatow. Black Girls and Maude?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Maud in the Hood? What's it called?
Jesus Christ, man.
Sorry.
What?
Maud at the BBQ?
No. Oh, my God.
No? Who let that Jewish nepotism baby at the barbecue?
That's not.
That's a line in the movie.
I don't think it is.
I think Serena says that.
Okay. I'll look at the board. Connections for 4. I am dialed in. I'm just doing well.
Make it a true daily double.
So I double my score.
Correcto mundo.
I will go with 6.
Loser.
Playboy, Lacoste, Puma, Red Bull.
Sucker.
Are these all brands with animal mascots?
That is correct. These are companies with animal logos.
Okay. Whew.
Stupid question.
Yeah, Playboy bunny, the Lacoste alligator, the Puma is a puma, and then Red Bull is a Red Bull.
Oh, I thought it was Wings, the band with Paul McCartney.
Let me roll it to ya. Let me roll it. Great song, great band, great man.
Oh, he never touched no kids.
We hope. Let's go with the dogs for 4.
Adrian Lanker's dog arrives after hearing this song from her 2020 album, Graydon.
Get the fuck over here.
That is wildly incorrect.
What? All right.
Now he has an opinion on whether it's
Yeah,
right.
what?
You just say it's wrong.
It was just a guess.
It's weird.
I thought it was the Adrian Lanker song, Get the Fuck Over Here.
Yeah, don't have to make it personal. I don't understand what his deal is.
Wildly incorrect. Ken Jennings would never.
Yeah.
He'd go home to his 10 wives and he'd shut up. He's humble.
Yeah, I'm on your side now. I say we combine our points. Me and you versus Grant.
Tip touchers. Yeah.
What is it?
This is Come.
Yeah, that's what
Ew.
Oh, come on.
I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to be dirty.
Yeah, let's be mature about the show.
Yeah, I thought it was get the fuck over here with all that cum. All that dog cum.
Let's do a game for 2, please.
Both a table and a partner are needed for this one-on-one game of strength. Riley.
Arm wrestling.
That is correct.
You can't do that.
God.
You can't harmonize my guess.
I can do it.
No,
And
I
just
buzzed
did
in
perfectly.
first. That means I have the floor.
I know, but I perfectly harmonized it.
The floor is mine, so you don't speak.
The floor is mine. Tip touchers.
Let's do star vocals for 2, please. Oh, fuck.
That is Fantastic Mr. Fox.
It sure is.
This is Wes Anderson.
Yeah, Wes Anderson directed it. I don't think he's the voice of the Fox, though.
Could be Adrian Brody.
Could be Bill Murray or Ed Norton, Luke Wilson. It could be, what's his face? The guy from Coconut Records. Could be
Dango
him.
Mushi?
That's not his name.
My bad.
Yeah. His name's Jason Schwartzman.
Jason.
I'm not gonna do it.
Fuck this Fox. What is it, Grant?
This is George Clooney.
Yeah, good thing I didn't.
Yeah.
The Cloonster.
Mm-hmm.
He actually wore a fuzzy fur costume and like ran around outside when they recorded his vocals for this.
Really?
Yeah, it's bizarre and gross. Hollywood is disgusting.
Yeah, Wes Anderson originally wanted Guy Fawkes to do it. He said it was a Guy Fawkes, but
Yeah.
then he said no.
That sucks.
Yep. How about then let's do the connections for 1.
Star, Skinhead, Widow, Beatles. Riley.
Songs, but black is before this word.
That is correct.
Black Beatles in the city, be back immediately to confiscate the money. He's doing the mannequin challenge. He's perfect.
The mannequin challenge is something very different to me.
What is it?
It's try not to look at their boobs in the department store.
It's an impossible challenge.
It is impossible.
Yeah.
I've never succeeded.
Yeah, that always confused me with no nipples.
Some have nipples. The good ones do. The expensive ones. The ones I can't get my hands on.
Are you gonna sneeze? You get that lip quiver like you have a sneeze somewhere in there.
No.
Okay. Let's do music theory for 1.
This complicated singer was theorized to have died and been replaced by a body double in 2003. Riley.
This one ain't complicated. It's Avril Lavigne.
That is correct.
Why'd you have to go and say I'm not a fucking clone? Yeah.
I'm still Canadian. Damn it!
You're acting like I'm somebody else, leaving me frustrated. Life's like this, you. I think honestly she might have been hip to the whole theory before it even happened. Ding dong. I think Adam Levine is the one who got cloned, by the way.
Hell yeah.
Let's go with Potpourri for 2.
Monica Barbaro received an Oscar nomination for her performance as this folk artist. Riley.
Who is Joan Baez?
That is correct.
Joan was not that thick, ladies and gentlemen. Look it up. Monica Barbaro, booyah. You know what I mean? She's hot as all get out.
She's very, very good looking.
Super attractive woman. Can't speak on her acting. She didn't get a lot of lines in. But good
I thought
singer.
she was fantastic.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that she mogged Timmy every time they were on screen together.
Well, I would agree. He didn't do much. Elle Fanning, though, really stole the show for me.
I thought she was great. I thought that Monica Barbaro did very, very well in this role. I wasn't judging the movie's accuracy based on the thickness of the actors.
I think it's fucked up how we over-thickicize the past.
I don't think it matters.
We do, though, and it's sick.
Well, Timothy Chalamet did have to put on 20 pounds to play Bob Dylan, which is hilarious because Bob Dylan was rail thin.
That's what I mean. He made him too thick.
No, he made him accurate.
Too thick.
He also is much taller than Bob Dylan, though.
No shit.
Yeah, Bob Dylan's 5'7", but...
Bob Dylan was born in the 20s, dude. He was malnourished. He grew up eating beans and dirt.
Yeah, he wasn't born in the 20s. If he was born in the 20s, he'd be 100.
He's 90.
Let's do star vocals for 4.
Wow, I'm a lemur. Oh, this is fucking goddamn it, Chris Rock.
Oh, hey, I'm a lemur.
Yeah, this isn't helping me. Oh no, he's got that voice. No one from Madagascar talks like that, by the way. I watched a documentary on Madagascar.
None of the animals talk at all in real life.
Some do. Some birds can.
Well, they don't talk.
They speak.
Barely.
Speak, monkey.
I forget who does this, but I remember it was referenced in that one song.
I think it's Chris Rock.
It's not.
Who is it?
This is Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh, you forgot he cashed out on that.
Yeah, Borat.
That's weird. A lot of people have seen his dick, and then a lot of children have beloved him as Monkey Voice. Of course, I'm referencing Bruno and the dick parade that is as a movie.
Sure.
Saw that in theaters as a teenage boy. Severely uncomfortable with the amount of penises.
Right. Connections for 3, please.
Reed, Watt, White, Mac, Graydon.
I fucked up. I'm going to say Reggie.
That is incorrect.
Reggie White and Reggie Watts. Yeah, I'm I'm cool on it.
These are NFL Defensive Player of the Year winners.
I knew Khalil Mack. I knew Reggie White. My dumbass.
Let's do potpourri for 3.
This artist won both Best Pop Vocal Album and Best Pop Solo Performance at the 2025 Grammy Awards. Graydon.
It's not Channel Trace. Oh, shitter. Pop girly. It was a pop girly year. I'm going to go with Sabrina Carpenter.
That is correct.
Thank you. The little blonde broad.
Yeah, you figured it out eventually.
It was either her or Channel Trace is where I was in between.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had a lot of confidence that you weren't going to get there when you said Channel Trace, but I didn't realize those were your 2 options.
Yeah, this was I was in between. Right. And Channel Trace obviously is a black man who makes kind of techno rap.
And Channel Trace on my television was ESPN.
Really? ESPN was 24 for me.
Really? Growing up?
24 and 25. 25 was ESPN too. I can do all my channels. I realized this the other day.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, it was 3.
That's weird.
For Buckeye Cable System.
3 was like nonsense for me. That was like public access. The lower you got, the worse it got.
Oh,
got, like,
most of them were in like the first, like 20 through 35 were like the fun channels for kids, teens, tweens, that sort of thing.
Nice.
And then like the news and all that stuff was like 3 through 18.
29 was AMC. 30 was Nickelodeon. 32 VH1. 34 MTV. 33 was Spike TV. Nope. 35 was Cartoon Network.
See, 21 Nickelodeon, 22 Cartoon Network, 26 Disney Channel.
Oh, Disney was crazy.
Not really.
That place was nuts.
I mean, no.
One of the best ever.
It was just kids' TV.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Okay, go ahead and go for it.
Don't.
I didn't touch you.
Dog, 5.
MJ Lenderman's dog can be found doing this in the middle of the night. Graydon.
Say howling.
That is incorrect.
That's horseshit, dude. Give me my 5 points back. Give it to me, Tony.
No.
Okay.
Manning fireworks? I feel like a dog cannot man fireworks. It's
no
too
shot.
dangerous.
DUI